Dr. Tam, how are you, sir?
I'm fine, Chris, and how about you?
Yes,
Yeah.
fighting the spiritual battle, you know how it is.
Yeah, I've seen you've been really busy with your Everest campaign, and I think that's an absolutely brilliant place to start off with.
Yes, I thought, what better way to highlight this horrible issue of veteran suicide and the fact we lose mates in the military community like it's like nothing, like it's some sort of normal. And the thing that kind of prompted me to do this, Tam, is that I know my own story. I remember becoming homeless after leaving the military, suffering chronic addiction, totally losing my mental health. Unfortunately, I was able just to develop three very simple strategies that allowed me instantly to move on. And what I'm seeing in our community, the military veterans community, is nobody is making the link between the childhood trauma and the tough upbringings, or the lack of a father figure, or a father that, for want of a better term, didn't love you enough. No one's making this link between that and the complex PTSD veterans experience upon arriving in Civvy Street. And I think we know the reasons why it's not mentioned, and we'll cover that. But when you look at the research clearly links, even in veterans, the link between adverse childhood experiences and complex PTSD and obviously the undesirable exit that many of our lads and some lasses are taking. Am I making a bit of
Yeah,
sense,
you are.
Doctor?
I mean, I could get down to some gruesome details of guys I served with in the Falklands and even Northern Ireland that are no longer with us, and they are unalived themselves, and it's absolutely tragic. Yeah, and you're so right. What I can do, Chris, is I can definitely come in and say my own personal research when I did my PhD. I went out and I interviewed over 60 paratroopers, way away from the first guys ringing the bell in the Whitleys in the Second World War, sorry, right through to them coming off the battlefield in Iraq. And so one of the questions I would ask them is, why did you join the Parachute Regiment? Because it was all paratroopers, okay? And you go back to these very early guys all the way through to 2003. And I guess it's even worse now because we have a more snowflake generation that are just not got the mental fortitude that we had when we were younger. And so especially in terms of civilians, not so much the army. But the point was the amount of childhood trauma that leapt out of their personal stories. Now, you can go onto my website, and on that database, there are over 60 stories that you can listen to, and you will see, and you can hear them in their own words, telling about childhood trauma, parents missing, being bullied, orphans, and all the aspects that go with that. But there was also another branch, and this is really strange because I haven't seen so much research on post-traumatic stress about this. What about the guys that fathers and grandfathers, it became a tradition? These guys were basically forced to follow their fathers. Imagine having to do that. I always go back to that Monty Python film where they're standing on the swamp and he's saying, "Someday, son, all of this will be yours." Yeah. What? The curtains? But what he was, "I want to sing, father. I want to sing." How many of these guys did not want to be? And there was a reason for some of the stress. So, a few years ago, while I was looking at this, I did some research and I found out, I think it goes back to 2018, and it was a BBC, believe it or not. They came up with a statistic that said that when they looked at the general population, there was roughly 4% of the general population in the UK would be suffering from some form of post-traumatic stress. When they looked at the military, it jumped to 7.4%. So what I want to do is I just want to tag on some numbers here to just show you, especially amongst the veterans, before I come back to address the issues of childhood trauma. If you take that 7.4, let's say 7.5 and round it up, that's 75 every 1,000, 750 every 10,000. It's 7,500 every 100,000. So by the time we get to the 1 million, and believe it or not, there's over 1.2 million of us veterans alive and kicking in this country. That becomes up to something in the region of 75,000 that are suffering actively right now from post-traumatic stress. Now, 7.5 out of 100, that doesn't sound much, does it? But like I say, when you get up to 75,000, that's the size of a small, medium town, a medium, large town. That's the amount of people, male and female, but mostly male. Now, out of that, you look back at the BBC and I say, well, okay, that doesn't sound right to me. My own research, nearly every character that I researched, either one of the two forms, forced into the army, or it was a result of some kind of childhood stress. The other part of it was their service and what happened to them. And so therefore, there's a link. Now, when that link goes up to, say, combat stress and what we saw and what we did, that goes up to 11, 14, or 17%. Now, it doesn't matter what the BBC say. I don't trust them because they traditionally undermine things and they support the establishment, and where they might not want to let kids know, if you join the army, you got a good chance of getting killed. Yeah, with Northern Ireland and all that around the time, I can understand that propaganda. So the point is, you have this childhood trauma already allowing people to enter an institution like that where they're further traumatized by the training. Then they're further traumatized by the culture that they come into. And of course, the warrior cult, the stigma. You're not supposed to show fear. You don't have, the cowardice just doesn't come into it. And so therefore, you're trapped in a paradigm, you're trapped in a culture, you're trapped in a belief system in which it doesn't allow for people actually having little mental breakdowns. I said to you a couple of times ago in a chats ago, I had one in Newry in Warren Point, and it was quite legitimate. And I know from my own personal history, that was the root of my combat post-traumatic stress. However, I go back to my own childhood, and I'm not going to talk about that because it's not nice to talk about your own background. But what I find out is that nearly every childhood is traumatic in some way. It's part of growing up. It's normal. Fall over in the playground, cut your knee, your first kiss, girlfriend ditches you, all of these kinds. These are all part of normally growing up. What's different is the abuse and the dysfunctional families that these kids come from. So I can speak for the Parachute Regiment. You can speak for the Royal Marine Commandos. We could find everybody in every single regiment that's ever been in this country, and they will sit down and they will be able to say the same thing. That many, many of us joined the army. We found a family. We found a home. We found somewhere. And of course, we were willing to put up with the training and accept the training in order to be in that family and home. So now we come to the other equation. I really didn't believe this. I had an extreme reaction to leaving the tribe. Me personally, I didn't want to, but I did. And when I did, I regretted it, but I didn't regret it. So I was all confused. But again, go into my database, you'll hear some of these soldiers. One guy, for particular, tears. He leaves the barracks. He can't even start the engine in his car, and he's sitting and he's telling me in the interview, crying his eyes out over a sense of loss. Well, wait a minute. Loss, post-traumatic stress. So you've not only got that, you may have guys that end up having the result of childhood trauma, morphing into the stress and trauma of being in the army, morphing even more for those that experience combat, and then the pain of leaving the tribe, which again is in a very highly emotional moment for a lot of people. You invested so much. Now, I know that we've chatted and you've told me about some guys that you know, and as a result of all of their training, all their experience, they just cannot live outside the army, and yet their time is up. It's so common, Chris. As a kid, I know it was the Second World War not long before, but we used to see guys, traffic warden, immaculate, polished bulled shoes, marching up and down. As I said to you, the only thing missing was his pay stick. Institutionalized. So when you put the three, it's not a double whammy, it's a triple whammy. And now, yeah, we come to the other side of the equation. What's the support? I said 75,000, that was the BBC. So 75,000 out of a million. What if it's the upper end? What if it's, let's say, 14%? And we got 150,000. You've still got the same amount of care. You've still got the same amount of psychologists and psychiatrists and veterans charities and so on working with these people. But don't you think it gets to a point where they get overwhelmed? The more combat that goes on, the more stress as a result of people's service, the more people understand it. For example, it used to be post-traumatic stress. Now it's complex post-traumatic stress. What I feel about psychiatrists, psychiatry, and psychologists. But the point is, there is not the support in this country on a decent level in order to facilitate for people out there. And some of them, and I know them personally, the regimental aid post I served in the Falklands, four of them have committed suicide since. What does that tell you? There was no support for them. It was stiff upper lip, boys. Yeah, the RSM, when we got back from the Falklands, you do not go home and talk about this. That's what they said. That was our orders. And what do you do when you get back home? How many did you kill? That's what people are interested in. The gory, the shit, Not the fact that you were terrified, scared out your wits, and so on. Now, these are all traumatic experiences. But hey, you're a paratrooper, you're a Marine, yeah, you're a Royal Anglian, Royal Scots Guards, whatever. You're not supposed to show this. So it's an institutionalized reaction to a truth that they've known ever since the beginning. So my reaction to it is, yeah, it's out there, it's big, it's linked from childhood through your service, sometimes involve leaving your service, but most importantly, it's the support that you don't get. That, thank you very much, we've paid you your money, you've done your service, now fuck off. So what you're doing, Chris, I just want to finish on this, and I feel very important. What you're doing, Chris, in trying to raise money and trying to weigh awareness is right up my street. I knew that we were going to be talking this morning, and I had tears last night, my friend. My stress came back out. I'm nearly choked now. And tears for these guys. The only way out was to take their own life. There was no support for them. And of course, you don't find out about it until many years later. Sorry, I got emotional there.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely fine. It's an emotional subject. Hence why I'm gonna. This is why my Everest climb's dedicated to it, Tam. And there's so much to say here, and in no particular order. When I'm on LinkedIn for friends out there that don't know it, it's a business it's like the business kind of Facebook. Everyone's a little bit more, they keep themselves a little bit more in check on LinkedIn because we've got to wear the mask on LinkedIn. So and I sort of just see through the facade of it all. And it's say I put up a post about, hey folks, I'm climbing Mount Everest. I'm self-funded. I'm want to highlight the link between adverse childhood experiences and adult mental health, and in particular, why we're losing so many people in the veterans community. And of course, friends, we're not solely saying this. We're just saying that if research shows it's a factor, why is nobody talking about it? So I put a post on there, and I might say, friends, if you'd like to support me on my journey, I've got to pay for all this. You might want to chip us in a $5 so I can shout this message from the highest place on the planet.
That's it.
If you're a company out there and you've got a couple of quid to spare, you can write it off as tax. It's not like it's hard for you. Get in contact. And if I'm lucky, Tam, I might get 15 or so people just give us a little feeble like. might get one comment going, oh, good luck on Everett, or it's terrible what's happening to our... I see a post then by someone posting some, what you and I might call cringy army barmy shit, you know? Like, aren't our guys great? What they did in Afghanistan. And of course, there's a whole nother side to that story, but that's not the point of what I'm saying. And some cheesy photo of someone polishing their medals, or that post gets thousands of likes. The comments, you can't talk, there's so many comments on it. And I find it personally, Tom, just sycophantic. This kind of indoctrinated brainwashing the public have had through the Hollywood, through the Rambo, through the Deer Hunter films, all of which were designed to take the focus off the illegal conflicts and put them on the sorrow of the poor soldier, right? They did that for a reason. The soldier can never do any wrong. So when he's in an illegal conflict, like we've seen for 20 years in the Middle East, when they drop in all kinds of hideous ordnance on essentially goat herders and their families, and I'm being a bit flippant here for a reason, just ignore the white phosphorus on the men, women, and children. Just ignore that. Your job is to feel sorry for the soldier. Bloody hell, he didn't want to go and do that, and now the guy's got PTSD, and it's everyone's just so massively being led and lied to, Tam, and deceived about the reality of what the military is, or should we say the military-industrial complex, B, the kind of people they're recruiting into it. And I've got a video that Kenny sent me of an armed forces day where they're handing these lethal, evil weapons of war to 5 and 6 year olds, letting them play with it as though it's a toy, where these things solely have one focus, is to kill other young men and women. And this is I'm not on a campaign here, Tam. I'm not out to change people. I'm saying this for those people out there that deserve to hear this and understand it, and are like, yeah, Chris, thank you. I'm totally with you. I had my suspicions, or I get emails from people, Tam. The last one was, I lost my son to suicide. Chris, thank you for what you're doing. And Tam, you know how it is. I could put the picture of me polishing me medal, or marching up and down the square with bloody camouflage paint on me, and I know that will get thousands of adoration from the likes from the public, and well, I don't want to do that. I want to highlight like a serious. I want to be able to look myself in the mirror at the end of the day and say, do you know what? I didn't promote all the war bullshit. I promoted the victims of it, and moreover, not them, because they're dead. Right. They took themselves out the game. What about the one, like my mate that sent me this? I'm just going to show a picture, Tam. He sent me this lovely picture. He bought all my books. Massively supported me. Was a sergeant. I'm not going to say any names, folks, but a sergeant major in the Royal Marines, and he took himself out the game the day he left, or the day after he left the military, and had 4 beautiful young. All kids are beautiful, but you know what I'm saying. 4 little ones. They weren't even adult. I mean, one of them. And it's like, when are we going to stop tossing each other off that we was so ace and the profession was just so brilliant, and what we did, we can all be, and actually talk about the reality of it, that it's horrific.
Right. So if we were to talk about the reality of it and the recruitment offices were to talk about the reality of it, nobody would join. What was the title of our first chat? You chose that. I just let it slip. Nobody gives a fuck. They just want to be entertained. They don't want to hear the baggage. They don't want to hear about your destroyed life. They don't want to hear about divorce. They don't want to hear about in and out of jobs. Yeah, they don't want that. All they want to do is shooty bang bang, and they want thrills. So yeah, you just have to go back and just look at the propaganda, and it's got worse and worse and worse. And now we're at a point where people are just not interested in joining the army. They're just not interested. They're not interested in joining the military. They're not interested in putting a uniform on. So, where are we going with all of this? If there's less and less military, then there's going to be less and less need for veteran support. And again, the guys out in the limb, like you just mentioned, the guys out in the limb that are very vulnerable to all of this, who's going to support them? It's what you're doing by bringing attention to these causes, is allowing people to give them an opportunity to actually care. But in a world where people don't care, you're banging your head against the wall. What's that I used to say? Farting into a hurricane. So what you've got to do is you've got to be able to put yourself in a position where people understand the morality of what war is. People understand the morality of sending young people to war. We've all seen it, 1914 to 1918, whole villages marching off, and silence coming back after a year. 87, 89, young men left on a battlefield in 10 minutes. It's only shell shock. Well, shell shock, unfortunately, was very real, but again, swept under the carpet. And you can see all the way through history, this denial, that you're a warrior and so that you have to suck it up and that it can't affect you because you're hard as nail, you're all Rambo. Well, excuse me, the Rambo film's all about a guy with heavy PTSD. Yeah. And they made him a hero. So, yeah, my point is there's a disjoint between the actual reality of what we experienced and the ability to convey that to a public that's been brainwashed and trained to be entertained by people like us. And then there's what we used, I don't know, the Marines, you call them Walter Mitties. We do in the Reg, Walter Mitties. The other side, this is the LinkedIn people that you're talking about, the fantasists that can't imagine what it's like. And their lives are never being as fulfilled in the way that ours, so that they actually project onto themselves a pseudo life in the military. Now, these guys are never going to have PTSD. These guys are never going to be able to contribute to it. But what they are doing is they're putting us into a position where they're ridiculing some of the greater work that guys like that people like yourself are doing. And so you're always going to come up against that. And then there's the other side, the people, as you say, the institutionalized, that they've just gone far too far. They can't shake it off. And again, I come back to it. That was a revelation in my PhD. I never thought that would be a pattern. And yet there it is, clear, as loud as you want. The trauma of leaving is just as bad as the trauma of being in, and it's just as bad as the trauma of childhood. Triple whammy, Chris. So yes. No wonder.
Tam, just one sec. When I say friends at home, could you please check if you're liked or if you're subscribed? We get a lot of people unsubscribe from this channel for some reason. And if you've never subscribed, maybe you'd consider it, because we talk about the things here that you're not going to hear elsewhere. And if you don't hear these things, you don't develop yourself as a person. And that is so critical on your enlightenment journey, is that you listen to everything, you take it in, and you develop the cognition to process it. So that's what we're here to help you with. Can I just shout out the Everest Summit itself, which will be taking place beginning in April. My expedition starts over there in the Himalayas. If you can chuck in a $5, folks, there is a link below. If you understand what Tam and I are saying, or you empathize with it, if you can chuck in a bit more, great. But I won't be upset if a $5 is all you got. That's really, really kind of you, and thank you to everyone that's chipped in so far. Tam, I'm going to just chuck a couple of things out here, and then I want to finish off by talking about how do people get out of this? What do they need to know? What do they need to recognise, etc., etc. But one of the things I want to raise awareness is I don't think the charities are helping. I'm not a big fan of corporate charities anyway. When I see a lot of people doing, for example, stuff for cancer research, my heart just freaking drops, especially when it's for a military, it's military people doing it, because I know the reality of what's behind a lot of these charities and their intentions, can we say. I really don't think, for example, a charity professing to cure cancer ever really wants cancer to be cured, do they? That literally
then they go out of existence.
Yeah, in a corporate materialistic world, that makes no sense at all. So that's not helpful. In the same vein, these charities that have set themselves up off the back of Afghanistan and before that Iraq, and they all use the catchy titles, warrior, wounded, this kind of stuff. And in their write-up, when you read the write-up, it's, don't let our soldiers fall behind. They fought for you on the battlefield and they brought the horror home. They need your support. It's like, well, hang on a sec. I would say statistically, most of the veterans we're losing didn't get traumatized in conflict, probably because most people never see it. Even if you go in combat, you're still statistically unlikely to fire a shot or have one fired at you. Myself, don't know about you, Tom, in the Northern Ireland conflict, we were involved in four, maybe five contacts, even to the point where, as I mentioned before, the chap behind me on patrol got hit 3 times. I swear, brother, didn't traumatise me at anything. To me, I was just like, that's my job. I was proud to do it. I was a man, albeit I was a very young man. I was 19, and I went forward as a Royal Marine. I'm not saying, I can't speak for everyone, obviously, and everyone's different, and that's fine. But my point is, you're out there, you're a veteran, you're struggling, you don't know why you're feeling these things, but you're feeling this darkness, this lack of self-worth, this lack of love, that, why should I be here? Nobody cares. I'm useless and nobody cares. That's the absent father talking to you, right? Or the overbearing father or mother or whatever it might be. And they're thinking, well, do you know what? I can't go to one of these charities or call one of these helplines, can I? Because I haven't been in combat. I wasn't in and they're just set up for war heroes. And I'm not that. I'm I stack blankets or I pack parachutes or whatever it might be, and do you see what I'm getting at, Sam? They're misleading people. They're misleading people.
It's institutionalization that you're referring back to again. It's the 3 different types that you'll get out of the army. However, or out of the military, sorry. However, your point being, it comes back to people they're not really interested. This whole thing, self-sacrifice and all the rest of it, they don't understand the military mind that takes you into a position where you're prepared to put yourself in a combat situation. And because they can't relate to that. But when you're confronted with something on celluloid, like a documentary or something like that, there's always an agenda, there's always a plot, there's a story to be told. Whereas the real stories very, very, very rarely get told, because if they did, people, as I said, people just would not join the army. If you were to really get down there and explain, but again, we come back to that, the propaganda. People are not interested. So, yeah, it's how do you get from where you are to get your message across to people that, yeah, they're aware, but they're not really interested? What's it going to take for it? And this is a fundamental problem.
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, Tom, I'm looking over there because the chat's flying, and I've been putting it up on the screen. Some of it's not coming up, folks. I'm not sure. Not sure why. There we go. Yes. So there we go. And I had someone say to me the other day, some people, Chris, get traumatized in war. I know. I've worked with people experiencing moral injury, and moral injury for friends at home is when you've experienced something or you've done something in combat, in theatre, that you later find really hard to live with. And I personally, I think because of my makeup, I'm really glad, Tam, I never had to kill anyone, and I just think that would really be a burden when you mature and you get older and you have the ability to look back and reflect and do the research on these things, find out what really was the driver behind that conflict, not some nonsense they told us on the news. I can understand that must be really, really difficult. But research has shown that people with adverse childhood experiences are significantly a higher risk of suffering moral injury from their combat experience.
Yes, because they're already on a journey of self-depreciation and self-denial because of their childhood experience. As I say, childhood is by itself, by its nature, traumatic. But again, that doesn't legislate for the actual experiences that some kids go through. So yeah, adding on that to being in an organization, especially, like you go in at 15-year-old as a boy soldier, your brain's not developed properly. You're still evolving. When we get to 21, 22, we stop growing. We're still getting pimples and spots. And you're bringing in a 14, 15-year-old kid, throwing him in a uniform, and then training him to be a killer. And that's all the references you got. And what parents in their right mind, when you think about it, would send their sons off to do something like that? This is what always got me. And again, I don't know about the Marines, but I can speak for the Parachute Regiment. The vast majority of junior soldiers were members who were somebody or a brother or somebody had been in the regiment, and they were obliged to follow on in family lines. Now, take that through a military service, as I say, 22, 25 years, and you get the institutionalization. Yeah, that is not the combat stress that we're looking at, which is different, which is the actual stress that you go through from seeing something shocking, something horrendous that imparts you. So they're all handleable with a different strategy. But there's no point in having the perfect strategy and all the answers if nobody's going to listen to you. And here's the problem. We're a very small voice in a very loud echo chamber, because, as I said, across 4% of the population against 11, 14 or 17%, when you want to take the actual figures, that's a lot of people from a very small part of society that end up with stress. Where's the resource? Where's even the research, the genuine research to resolve this? Well, as I found out, they won't do it, because if they do it, it's an admission in itself inherent in the problem of encouraging people to join an organization in which one of your jobs is to kill or maim or destroy. So when you put that against all the Hollywoodization and all the romanticization of it, and all the things about people winning medals and all that, you bring in a whole different argument. And that's why people don't care. They just don't care because they've never experienced it for themselves. Watch it on a screen, interpret, take a feeling, maybe a little bit of empathy and understanding, but you can't smell it. You can't taste it. You don't really know what fear is. And that can stick with you for the rest of your life. So how do you get rid of a moment like that? Well, you need help. You need services. You need support. But as you said, with so many people out there needing it and so little money and resources going in to help it, This is no wonder that we've got so many people unaliving themselves on the streets of our country in disastrous, poor situations. It's disgusting, it's reprehensible, and it's true, and it's happening even as we speak. And like I say, last night finding out about another one, heartbreaking. That could have been prevented by an outreach, but nobody wants to listen to people like you and me.
What gets
They
me,
want,
Tam, is when you see, like the last chap, the last Royal Marine, which I think was about a week ago, the guy was clearly sort of our age or you know, thereabout. And when he took himself out of the game, you're left thinking, my God, that damage was there for
all the time.
years. If it were the
Yeah.
childhood stuff, that's best part of 60 years that guy has been carrying that burden, and not one person has tapped him on the shoulder and gone, listen, son, you know, let's go and have a chat. You know,
Well, with you raising awareness and the things that you're doing, and I don't say stunts that you're pulling because they're not stunts, it's proper thought out ways, you know. And again, this that military side, that hard man side. Mine, I'm much more on the soft. I'm trying to help people come to terms. You know, I put it this way: is to realize what's wrong, is to reset your mind, and then it's to resurge. And you've done it, and others have done it. But like you just said 2 minutes ago, this guy who had nobody to put out a hand and help him. Just imagine if he'd been able to spend 10 minutes with someone like myself, who could reframe it all and put it in a context for them and give them some way of finding it out. Now, my methods are controversial, I agree, but they work. And the reason they work is because I've been there and I've done it and I've seen it and I've studied it and I've lived it. And folks out there, I still suffer post-traumatic stress. It will never, ever leave me. But think of it like this. I can go to a psychiatrist or psychologist. It's like cutting your hand. They put a plaster on top of it to make it heal. But the healing is inherent in the skin. It's the same with the mind. The mind and body are one. If you are scarred in your mind, the healing is inherent in there. And so therefore, being able to get inside and find out what the issue is and be able to deal with it and then lay on and overmap a different way of thinking, a different way of being, that takes guts and courage. But when I work with people who are willing to take that path, I see results. Now, I can never say that I've stopped someone going and unaliving themselves or anything. I've never been in that position. But I certainly know that the people that I've encountered and people I've given advice to and listened to and understood, just that process of having somebody listen just for a few minutes, that can be the trigger. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? That can be the trigger that reframes their whole life and gives them an opportunity to move. But there again, there's the other side of it. Yeah, the people, the virtue signalers, the ones, look at me, poor me, I've been through this. You know, you were telling me a story earlier before we went live. And that character you described was absolutely perfect example of that. I am a Superman, I am wrong, nothing can affect me, etc., etc., etc. And then he ends up in the same position, comes out of the army, yada, 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 can't cope, can't live in society, and removes himself. You know, where's the support? And when you talk about charities, it's full of well-meaning people, well-meaning, well-intentioned people with very bare knowledge, little ability, and limited resources to make any change. So it's a niche charity that we live in. You bring out, and I know this because I used to work for a charity for blind in Nottinghamshire. You bring out the little fluffy dog, and millions come in. The little puppy, yeah, millions come in because of human beings. As I said, nobody gives a fuck, and therein lies the problem. So, yeah, I know we're short on time, Chris. Soldier on, my friend. Soldier on. I want all your audience to sit down and seriously think about making a donation to this man, because without him, there's still people out there who are struggling. So thank you. And thank you, Chris.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Tam. You know, I just want to explain about. Someone said to me the other day, like, why don't you just stay at home? I was like,
You can't.
and I was like,
It's not you.
what do you mean? He said, well, just help veterans by I was like, I don't understand the logic behind I stay at home and do nothing, and that somehow is going to magically, help for veterans. I thought surely it's better to pick the. I know Everest isn't like the toughest mountain to climb. I'm not trying to say it, but in society's minds, it's the biggest, toughest, gnarliest platform which to tackle, and to get up there, putting your life at risk, to bring attention,
awareness, yes,
to this important issue and get people talking, like the people that are talking in the chat now, that it clearly means a lot to, that is far more important in the grand scheme of us as a global community developing our understanding of this issue, and me being able to put the message out that my story, coming from being homeless, chronically addicted and mentally unwell, whilst working incidentally as a doorman for a Hong Kong crime syndicate, right? If I can come back from that, and anybody can. I think putting that message out, Tam, if it was to only save one person, that's priceless. That's priceless. But if, let's just to say, I was to go out and take a bank loan out and give a charity 30 grand,
you pay people's salaries.
They'd look at it and go, they'd look at it and say, well, that doesn't even pay half my salary this year.
Exactly.
And by the way, even if my salary's covered, that's like our photocopy bill, and our when we all go to a conference and we all stay in 4-star hotels and there's a buffet laid on every day, that we pay a caterer £2,000 or £3,000. Do you know what I mean? What I'm trying to say here is not about the money, folks. It's not about
the impact.
Yeah, it's not about just getting money and giving it to a veteran or giving it. It's about raising awareness and saying, why is no one talking about it? And let's get some professionals to come on my show and say, Chris, you're quite right. I've been working on this bit of research, or I've been looking in this area. And on that note, Tam, let's just put let's reach out to anyone out there who's struggling, veteran, non-military, doesn't all the same to us, right?
Mental health is one of our biggest issues, Chris.
So I'll go first. I'll say, there's days when you wake up where life isn't the way that you want it to be. And that's when you got to keep your eye on the prize and remember that there's always light at the end of a tunnel. And that if you was to disappear today, so many people would be absolutely devastated, gutted. They would miss you so much, and they would just wish that they could make you somehow come back. And don't throw it all away because of some issue from childhood that you can get over, you can work around. We've all had to, like Tam said, that it will always be there, but you get your workarounds. And don't, certainly in the case of my friend Craig, who was supposed to be in the boat next to me when we rowed across the Atlantic, in our sister boat, he left this awful message. It's down here in his Facebook profile, folks. Left this awful message to us all, and he said, by the time you read this, I'll no longer be here. And in Craig's case, he specifically stated that 3 people had or a bunch of people had let him down, and I would say, don't ever put your self-worth on other people. You are an absolute legend. You are unique in yourself, and you're on your special journey. And if you get a wobble, remember, you're a manifestation of the divine. You're God experiencing himself through your beautiful creation. And that is your first, where you reach out first. You reach out to the, to what you truly are, which is the all, the everything. You're majestic. Don't go to people, because people are beautiful, people are wonderful, but they will often let you down. And if you're of a sensitive nature through historical trauma, I understand that's upsetting. But when you put them to one side and just tune into the divine energy, they call it meditating, just shut your eyes. Take all those noise and all those thoughts out of your head. Forget the past, because it doesn't exist. Future doesn't exist either. You've just got this beautiful moment called the now, where everything is all right. And this perceived future where you have to be this character, or you need to be seen to be this, or earning this money, or loved by all that doesn't actually exist. You've just got the now, and it's absolutely fine. And keep believing in you and your special dream.
Okay, Chris, it's not a dream with you, it's a reality. And you're actually making it happening. And again, as always, bless you and thank you for the opportunity for me to have someone to talk to.
Yes, thank you, Tam. Shall we bring it to a close there?
Yeah, sure. It's a nice enough day to go out for a walk and have a think about what we've done here.
And we'll put your links below this, Tam. Also, friends, if I can just remind you to like and subscribe again, that would be awesome. If I don't ask people, folks, we never get any all this video just doesn't get any subscribers. I know that sounds crazy. We actually lose subscribers every day, Tam. It's crazy after 6 years hard work, but hey ho. And just a reminder, folks, that the GoFundMe link is in the comment section, and also in the description box under this video. Please don't just scroll on by to the next video. Just chip in a $5. It says an awful lot about who you are as well, I always think. And that's that. So look after yourselves. Keep smiling. Much love.
All right.
Morning, legends. I'm Chris Thrall. I'm a former Royal Marines commando. Upon leaving the forces, ended up chronically mentally unwell, self-medicating, undiagnosed trauma, and homeless on the streets of Hong Kong. It was the toughest battle I ever had to fight, but without the support of the medical community, without self-help groups, I learned the answers to rebuild my life, go on to complete a series of extreme charity challenges to send a vital message out there for other veterans who are struggling. I've run the length of the United Kingdom, run across the Sahara Desert, rode across the Atlantic Ocean. Now I'm taking on my biggest challenge yet, climbing Mount Everest. If you can support me, friends, and continue to shine a light for our struggling veterans and let them know there is life after PTSD, I'll put a link below. If you spare a $5, that's absolutely fine. And let's give our veterans the respect that they deserve. Much love.
No matter